And good evening, everyone. Welcome into the Voice of College Football on a Thursday night. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4 days left in the college football season. Only 4 nights to go until we will crown a new champion in college football. And that will either be Miami for the first time since 2001 or Indiana for the first time ever. I'm reminded Florida State, the only featured helmet, Florida State, the only featured helmet on the prized middle shelf. Why? Well, we just did our Florida State show. Check it out on the Florida State channel. That program is like a morgue right now. Players fleeing that weren't, for the most part, any good anyway, and them picking up nobody to replace them. So check out the Florida State show if you want to grieve with the Florida State fans, because it is a mess in Tallahassee. And Mike Norvell, of course, still kept his job. Again, we've got Miami and Indiana coming up on Monday night. We will be live here with you after the game. Maybe we'll go live before the game. I don't know. And we have also had some people suggest a watch party. We could also take part in that, possibly. This is the late night college football show here at the Voice of College Football, presented by FanDuel. So, of course, you know where to go if you want to lay a dime or two on the game or any kind of props bets that we will certainly outline a little bit later in the show. Let's get to the phone lines, as we also want to take a look at the transfer portal and the latest additions and subtractions there. The transfer portal closes. I'm going to get these dates mixed up because one of them closed between the portal and the NFL draft early entry window. One today, one tomorrow. Take your pick. So the NFL draft selections had to be in by either today or tomorrow, and the transfer portal window either ends today or tomorrow. One was the 15th, one was the 16th. And then in addition to that, of course, the portal window will be extended for Miami and Ole Miss. Welcome into the Voice of College Football. We got Dr. Buckeye showing up.
Yes, the great Mark Rogers. Hi, and how are you, sir?
I'm doing great. How are you?
I'm doing well. I was planning to maybe talk about this with you in the off season, but your Buckeye conversation this week with Tony and Steve about kind of the new college football we're living in here with the portal and obviously NIL, and we've been talking about this for a long period of time, has kind of led me to this conversation. I mean, we just as easily could have had it in the offseason, but let's have it now. When you take a look at the way, and roster construction has always been very interesting to me, but now that we're living in a portal NIL world, I don't know if you are hearing from, maybe other fan bases. You do a lot of other call-in shows and talk to a lot of other fan bases, but what is the feeling out there when it comes to the NIL and the allocation of funds when it comes to NIL? I know that we're still living in the wild, wild west, but do people look at it from the standpoint of like certain position groups get this, certain position groups get that? Is it still quarterback, obviously, at the hierarchy, and then maybe line of scrimmage after that? I was just kind of curious, if you have some thoughts on that and what you've heard on that.
Well, I've heard that the structure that they've placed on three, I don't know if you've checked that out, where they have the portal additions and subtractions, and they will have price tags attached to every player. That there are certain sources that they've obviously tapped into. It's a large organization that has credibility that they've tapped into to gain some fairly accurate numbers there. But in other spots, they're just guessing. So the information is obviously very spotty in terms of gaining accurate NIL numbers. But I think that our big cue comes from the NFL and comes from general managers being instituted as now almost a necessity in college football for these teams, and many of those college football general managers coming from the NFL. So I think we've got a very much a similar system, that they have an idea based on the revenue coming in from the boosters, the NIL collectives. Okay, this is how much money we have. And now we have an actual revenue share fund that
Hmm.
is roughly $20.5 million per school.
Hmm.
That is about 75 to 85% to football. So whatever that is, $17 million, that they know that they can work with that. And then whatever, and to my understanding from several sources, ever since that figure was released, my next question was, okay, out of 70 power conference teams, how many are going to, because it was never mandated that that was a cap, or that that was a mandated sum of money that had to be distributed to the players. It was more like that is the cap of revenue. It didn't have to all go to the players. But as I understand it, again, from reliable sources, the all the power conference schools are are maxing out at the 20.5 million. So you start there,
Hmm.
and then whatever Texas, Ohio State, Georgia situation is able to leverage through
Hmm.
NIL versus what Kansas or UNLV or Stanford is able to attract, or uh, a wide disparity. But just that NFL general manager component
Hmm.
leads me to believe that yes, they are looking at their personnel and their needs and determining. Um, they almost are capologists to a certain
Yeah.
extent, to be able to figure all this out.
Yeah, I mean, obviously, our road towards the NFL junior here we're well on our way. To that point, I mean, you look at it, and I'm an avid NFL watcher, and I'm making the apologies for that. I'm going to comment on my college purist friends here in about a minute. But to that point, in the NFL, obviously you go quarterback. The coveted positions are also the line of scrimmage. You look at offensive tackle, you look at edge guys, defensive ends, offensive tackle. I always say that if you can get quarterback the trenches and your skill players, or at least a couple of good skill players, you're in really good shape. Like if you got your quarterback, you're at least solid to really solid on the line of scrimmage. Now I think D line is more important than O line. I think you can get, as long as your offensive line isn't a liability and you creep towards average with offensive line play, and then your D line is really good, then I would look towards skill after that. I feel if you just told me those were my four elements to my football team, my quarterback was good, my O line was at least decent, and then my D line was really good, and I had a couple of good skill players, then I would really like my chances, even if the rest of my team was average to maybe even slightly below average. I don't know if you have some thoughts on that, because we have to look at this from where to allocate the sources towards when it comes to positions on the football field. This is why I put that out there. Do you have some thoughts on that, Mark?
Well, the NFL model is that the quarterback gets paid, the left tackle gets paid,
Yeah.
any kind of playmaker on offense that's extraordinary gets paid,
Yep.
edge rushers get paid, and cornerbacks get paid.
That's true. Corners too.
Yeah, so there's that model. I think that the offensive line is the most important position on the field. However, there are five of them. So I'm not saying that any one of them is the most important. Obviously, the quarterback is by far the most important position singularly. But as a unit, I think that the offensive line is the most important. However, I think that they're also, and again, maybe I'm hearkening back to a previous model of college football prior to NIL, but we got our cue from Wisconsin in particular, that's a very developmental position. So whether you are able to recruit just blocks of clay for offensive linemen, and you believe in your program, you believe in your process, you believe in your O-line coach,
Yeah.
who's paramount in all of this,
Yep.
because there's more chemistry that's needed and more mixing and matching. And okay, we're going to take the left guard and actually move him to right guard because we want to get this other guy on the field ahead of him. And there are more dynamics and more variables at the offensive line position, and getting them to play multiple positions is key as well. That I just think that that's the most important position, but it's probably the least skilled position coming out of high school. And again, if you have either the mentality that we still recruit, develop, and we can hang on to them, which is in question now, versus going out and getting offensive linemen that have been developed elsewhere and just plucking the best ones we can find, or at least ones that can work together to form a good group.
All right. So let me ask you this on the line of scrimmage, Mark. If given the choice, and this is your choice,
Yeah.
a great D line and average offensive line, or would you rather have a great O line or an average defensive line?
Well,
You
I
have to
think I
choose
know.
between one of the
Well,
two.
I already know where you're leaning, and I
Yep.
understand. I understand your lean because you can call plays to negate poor offensive line play or average
Right.
offensive line play. You can get the ball out of the quarterback's hands. You can,
Max protect.
scheme.
You can. Yep.
Yeah, max protect. You can scheme away from your weakest offensive lineman. You can do a few different things.
That's right.
I I
So you
think
don't.
it's easier to put together a formidable defensive line than a formidable offensive line. Like, I think that the majority of upper level SEC and Big Ten teams, and obviously some schools in the Big 12 and the ACC, have a bunch of freaks along the defensive front or at rush end to some degree. When I say freaks, I'm not talking about elite first round NFL talent, but I'm talking about dudes that are freakish athleticism, and they come off the ball and can create havoc rather than putting together an excellent offensive line. It seems like every offseason, and then once we get into August, what we hear out of most teams, even near the top,
Yeah.
well, we have questions along the offensive line. Hopefully our offensive line can be halfway decent.
Right. 1990s Cowboys offensive line anymore, Mark, where they're
No.
just, you know what I mean? And I think that what you were echoing was what I was going to say. You can mitigate behind, an average offensive line. That's why I said, the Ohio State loss to Miami to me was as much on saying in the offensive game plan as much as I think it was the offensive line. I know you can just murder the offensive line after that one, but Sane missed some throws and the game plan could have been better by day. So, I think both of those things can also be true. I would say, living in this portal world, I know you mentioned this On3 thing, but are people now going to, and maybe you're going to start to be doing this in your off season. We're going to give you some off season work here, Mark, just what you like. Will people be ranking portal classes going forward, much like we used to do the top 5, top 10 recruiting classes? Now we're just going to have to do the top 5, top 10 portal classes, I would think. Is that going
to, that ranking is going to be more valid, and it's going to be easier.
Yeah,
because you have collegiate experience to draw from to rank the players.
Right. Well, did you hear Signetti's philosophy on that when he came? They were talking about him, and McDonough was talking about it at the end of the blowout of the Oregon-Indiana game when McDonough was asking Signetti about the philosophy on that. And it's a fair point. He says, we want to look at getting guys out of the portal that has shown some production, obviously, at their former schools. Not necessarily pay for this 4-star that's been sitting on the bench at Alabama or Georgia, and he just can't get on the field because of, you know what I mean? There's a 5-star in front of him or something like that.
Well, yeah, if Signetti's pulled it off, it must be the way to do it. Yeah, I think that at the outset of the portal, it was a quarterback driven situation where obviously quarterbacks want to play and there's only one that gets to play. So they were looking at the guy in front of them thinking, I'm not going to play, therefore I'm moving on. And that was the initial burst of players. The first portal class at quarterback was extremely impressive. Like it was like 15 to 18 deep of can't think of the guy's first name. Jefferson at Arkansas and Will
Oh yeah,
Rogers.
J.J.
And
Jefferson, or was it something? Yeah, I know what you're
oh my
talking about.
goodness, I can't
Yeah,
remember his name. The big fullback. They couldn't throw the ball to hit a broadside of a barn when he was a freshman, but by the time he was a sophomore and junior, he was hitting like 68% of his throws. But anyway, and then it seemed to go to two different classifications. The 4-star that thought that they should play,
yeah,
and they had made it through one season at their school and they weren't playing, and then they were moving into the spring session determining, okay, it's not in the cards for my sophomore year either, so I'm out of here. I
yeah,
was a top 75 player in my class, I'm gone if I can't play as a sophomore. And then it was also the Jared Verse, the Braden Fisk, the sure we can come up with zillions more group of 5 guy who was not highly recruited, sought after at all, but proved it in the Sun Belt or the MAC as an all conference kind of player. And now I want to play in the big time. And they had the track record to show that they could. So they got elevated for their junior or senior season.
Yeah, I think the perfect example for Signetti in Indiana was Hemby, who had shown that he was a fairly capable running back at Maryland there for a couple of years for them, and had shown some production on the field, for them, at that particular period of time. So to that point, he was getting a guy that had proven he can be capable and be capable, within the Big Ten. So that would be the type of move that would make sense for him. And then obviously they upgraded a quarterback with Mendoza compared to, I'm sorry, it was Tanner Rourke last year, right? Mark, was there?
Curtis Rourke.
Curtis Rourke. I wanted to say Tanner for some reason, but Curtis Rourke. Yeah. And then they obviously upgraded too on the line of scrimmage. So when you think about it, you upgrade at running back, you upgrade at quarterback, and then you upgrade on the line of scrimmage. So
they're a much better team than they were last year. I know that the record was only 1 game off in the regular season, but they were so much better this year.
Yeah, they picked on that schedule last year.
Yeah, they picked on that schedule, and that's just another feather in Signetti's hat to show, man, if you can walk into a program, significantly upgrade it to 11-1 in the Big Ten, regardless of how bad the schedule was, and then not plateau, but take your team from a top 20 team to a most likely the number 1 team in the country the next season. Yeah, I don't know what this guy's doing, but I've never seen anything like it.
Is this more important than your guy Bill Snyder? Although Snyder did not have the benefit of the portal world, though. When he flipped
evaluations. Yeah,
that's apple orange, I guess, because of the different college football world, right, Mark?
Yeah, you can fix a team now. Back then, if you're a great coach, take over a program, the only thing you've got going is just your ability and your staff's ability to coach and develop and game plan better than the previous staff, number 1. And then number 2, if you really hit on a nice freshman class, but you're only going to get so much impact from any freshman class. And that was all you had to work with. That's why you truly had a rebuilding project on your hands.
Right. Right. Well, remember what I said, Mark, back to the NFL yet again, as we live in the NFL junior. It's basically, to me, it reminds me, remember in the early 90s, I think Madden had made this point. He had said that free agency would doom football, and, they had said that, that it would, Well, they thought it would cause the end of the dynasties. And it did actually. Remember, free agency and the salary cap in the NFL in the
Sure.
early 90s did get us to more parity throughout the NFL. Even though we did have a Patriots dynasty, and obviously the Chiefs have had their run. Although to me, the Patriots dynasty was built on like 8 or 9 plays. I mean, because every game they always played in was a classic game. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
They had to win a lot of close games, and we had more and more close games. In that post free agent world because it was closer together. And remember, all those years in the NFL, you had teams that had 3-year, 4-year turnarounds, and were
Yeah.
able to turn around rather quickly. I think the equation is somewhat similar. Do you see some parallels there, Mark?
Well, I see some parallels. Not well. Again, Kurt Signetti is going to defy what I'm about to say. I don't know if we can expect the depths of the power conference teams, the Rutgers and the Wake Forest, to
Right.
elevate. I just don't think they have the resources. Maybe they don't. I don't want to say they don't care, but they're not going to just fully commit to anything and everything. Just gets committed to football to make that kind of run. But the Madden comment's interesting because I also think that he attacked that from a coaching standpoint that no longer could teams really operate well when they were different.
Yeah.
To 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 evaluate it in the moment at the time, that seemed to just be tearing teams apart. Where we would look at it now and be like, "What are you talking about? You're only flipping 12 players or 14 players. What's the big deal?" Um, but to him at that time, I think the continuity of the sport and continuity of teams was what he was looking at as being uh, irreparable. Where now we just figure that these guys can meet one day and 40 new guys can get thrown together, and within 3 or 4 days they're practicing together, and that's just kind of the way of life. People adapt, especially at
Right.
that age.
Right. Well, I mean, I would say, you obviously in college football, you have 100 and some odd teams. The NFL, you got, well, at that time, I think you had, 30 teams, 28 teams. Then you went to 38 by midnight, and now you have 32. But what it's done, I think, with college is it's brought like the top 25 and the top 30 closer to each other, is what it's done.
Apparently
Yeah.
that's what it looks like.
Yeah.
I'm not quite ready to pull that trigger, but it appears that way. It appears that way.
Yeah. Just some thoughts. By the way, no need to change the gear and the logo to Voice of NFL Junior. I think anytime soon. That'd be a lot to invest. So you had to change jackets and shirts and all that good stuff if you had to go down that road. But
NFL Junior? What your
no, as I'm saying,
yeah,
college
yeah,
football is becoming the NFL
yes,
Junior.
yes.
You know what I mean?
Yeah, I think we'll stick
Well,
with the traditional name
I,
for
I,
right now, at least.
can I comment on that? Now, I'm a fan of
You
the
can comment on
NFL.
anything.
Well, I'm a comment. I know you left the NFL a few years back as far as following it. You've already said that. I am still a huge NFL fan. As I've said, I don't like anything more than I like Ohio State. But if I'm watching two teams I don't care about, I'd still rather watch the NFL than college because the football is played at a higher level and there's a good chance the game will be more competitive. I've
Sure.
always said that. I've seen far more Super Bowls in the last 25 years than I've enjoyed the national championship games. Let's put it that way, Mark. And I think that's a fair statement.
Well,
Go ahead.
just to further your point, real quick, I made the comment last night because it ran through my mind. The last one-score national championship game we had was
The last one score national championship. Hold on, let me get some thought. It wasn't the last 3 years. It wasn't 21, 19, 18, 17. It was the 17 one, which was Alabama, Georgia, I believe.
bingo
Devontae Smith from
2017.
yeah.
Since we had a one-score national championship game.
Yeah. I would argue last ones became competitive at the end, but yeah.
Alabama, Georgia was competitive.
True.
The second one, that was a great game, even though it was a 15-point game at the end.
Right.
Alabama was driving. Alabama actually had the lead with about 5 minutes left in the game, and they actually were driving to tie the game with a 2-point conversion, but Bryce Young threw a pick six. So that was competitive. Obviously, Notre Dame made a run at Ohio State last year, so it was
Right.
in doubt, even though it didn't feel that way. But the other ones were pretty lousy.
Yeah, yeah. Well, that's what I said is if you take since the BCS had a title game in 98 to that same period of time and compare every national title game to every Super Bowl, you're going to see a lot more competitive and a lot more entertaining Super Bowls than you are national championship games. And that ain't even close. So, again, I've had my teams played in that game 6 times. So 3 times I enjoyed it, 3 times not so much. But, you've seen a lot of blowouts in those games. And by the way, that's what the NFL brought you. When I first started watching Super Bowls, I watched a ton of blowouts in the 80s. And by the late 90s, we were starting to into the early 2000s, we had competitive Super Bowls.
Yeah.
So, think about how many blowouts you watched in Super Bowls,
Yeah, that's what I grew up with, was that there was such an enormous buildup to this game, and then it was such a letdown that by halftime the game was over, nobody cared, and
Right.
and you were just watching a coronation in the second half. And I would say, to back up your NFL claim in regards to what draws you to the TV, I will say, for whatever reason, when I'm scanning old football games on YouTube, and I do that a couple times a month, I will, I'll skip through a game. I'm not sitting there for 3 hours, but I'll skip through a game. It's 90% of the time an NFL game.
Yeah, there you go. Yeah,
Yeah.
I watch both. I watch both either college or now, like I said, I'm probably a little bit more NFL, but now let me ask you though, Mark, you hear a lot of people say, and it's a lot of your fan base, that they like college that much more than the NFL.
Oh, yes.
What are the top 2 or 3 reasons that people would always say that?
Well, I think they like the tradition. I think some of their points would be outdated, but they're still
Right.
hanging on to them. And I'm not
That
criticizing them.
that's where I was going with exactly what I was going to say
Yeah.
about it. Remember the old Dick Vitale line? He said college basketball, it's about the name on the front of the jersey. The NBA is about the name on the back of the jersey.
Yep.
Guess what, college football purists? You can't say that anymore.
No.
You're robbed of that, right?
Actually, it's become, and again, I think we start to attack the players. I don't think people have changed. The system changed.
Mm-hmm.
I hear people make comments and fans on social media posts about, how loyal these players were years ago. Well, they had no choice. They had to be loyal.
Right.
So with choices and options come decisions. And if anything, it's not become the NFL. It's become the NFL on steroids.
Mm-hmm.
You can watch your favorite team, and unless the team really makes a concerted effort to flip their roster, and they can only do so much of that, what do you think the average player change on a 53-man NFL roster is from year to year? It's got to be, what, 15 at the
Mm-hmm.
most?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, players, guys that are cut. You're talking about losing free agents, right?
You draft 7 guys,
Mm-hmm.
7 or 6 or 7 make the team. Usually just about everybody makes the team that's drafted, and maybe a couple free agents, and then free agents, meaning free agents from the college ranks. Maybe a couple make the team, and then after that, it's just NFL free agency. So that's a handful. So 15 probably at the most.
Yeah.
So 75% of the roster stays intact from year to year in the NFL. Well, that's not happening in college.
Yeah. It's interesting. It's just with the world that we're living in, Mark. It's just I find it interesting. I think for some of my college purist football friends, I wonder if it's deterring them from the sport moving forward. I always get the vibe from you, Mark, that you always tell me you were a much bigger college football fan 10, 15 years ago than you are today, and it's not even close, right?
Yeah.
Is that a fair statement?
But I would say that about every sport.
Yeah, okay, that's probably true.
But college football would be the least, probably because I do this, number one, because I was my son texted me today some kind of crazy high school stat about RT can I even pronounce his last name anymore because I haven't said it in so long. He was a catcher for the Marlins. Real Muto. How do you
Okay.
pronounce? I can't think of how to pronounce his last name. He's still in the league. He's with the Phillies. But anyway, my son asked me something about him, and I'm like, yeah, he was the catcher for the Marlins back in the late 2000s. 2008, 2009. Anyway, I take a circuitous route to say I was an enormous baseball fan, a huge baseball fan that had the extra innings package every year, so I could see every game. Every game was on all the time, in the NFL too. But
Yeah,
yeah,
I was with you on baseball. I used to have season tickets, probably up into
oh,
like
nice,
early 2000s. I was,
nice,
big.
yeah,
So because
yeah.
baseball's the best sport to go to.
Yeah, I know people say that. I know that the average sports fan says baseball's the best game to go to and the worst to watch on TV. I always loved watching baseball on TV. Never had an issue with watching baseball on TV, but I totally get it. I totally get what people's issue was. The last thing I'll say about your comment about people's disinterest is
Yeah,
that I did run a poll, I don't know, a few months ago asking that, and whether, I forget what the categories I put, but obviously, is your interest heightened, lessened, and then to various degrees? And yeah, there were far more people that commented that they were less interested in college football today than they were 5 years ago.
yeah, yeah. It's interesting. Well, you reap what you sow with these changes.
Yeah, and
That's
that's
for
coming from
sure.
people that are watching a college football channel.
Yeah, right. Well, a early prediction, last thought on you. I'm going to go 27-17 on Monday. If I don't talk to you by Monday, my Indiana. I think it's a close game for 3 quarters. I think Indiana maybe scores a late touchdown to pull it away. I think their defense will keep it close, and I just think Indiana is just a better all around football team.
Yeah, I'm going to make a prediction here sometime soon, and I will possibly release a video and just throw it out that way. I'm not going to default to the easy prediction that Indiana is going to win and Vegas has this right. I'm really going to think this one through because I do think that Miami has a legitimate chance. And by the score that you just gave and the scenario that you played out, you obviously do as well.
I do. I do. I think their defense can kind of keep them hanging around. I think Beck will do what Beck does, which is run the ball, throw short passes. And I think the real key is them running the ball with Fletcher. If they can run the ball with Fletcher and, Bain and Mesidor can get some type of a pass rush going, which, as I said, remember, Indiana's tackles, we got after, you know, we were able to get after Mendoza in that Big Ten title game, held them to 13 points. We just couldn't get anything done offensively in that game.
Or
So,
kick a field goal.
or kick a field goal. Oh, please don't remind me of field goals, Mark.
I
So,
saw that field goal on a short clip today. How I don't know if you do this, scroll through your phone and you get all these like 30-second clips, these reels, and somebody was proving some kind of point showing the Jaden Fielding
yeah,
miss. And it will really annoy me if Indiana blows Miami out like they have everyone else, that
yeah,
I'll be thinking, I would have loved to have seen a rematch.
yeah. Oh, well, hey, Ohio, like I said, we're taking moral victory. I saw you say that to Hellwagon on Buckeye Talk this week. That was funny. We stay within 3 points of Indiana. Oh, jeez.
My goodness gracious. I don't know.
All right, my friend. Well, always a pleasure to get together with the great Mark Rogers, voice of college football, voice of NFL junior, however way you wish to put it, my friend.
Thank you, David.
Take care of
Good to
yourself.
have you on. Thanks,
Yeah.
man. Always good to hear from Dr. Buckeye. And we want to remind everyone that the late night college football show here at the Voice of College Football is presented by FanDuel. And before we take this next call, let's look at these odds. We've got Miami opening as an 7.5-point underdog, and that has blown out to 8.5 points. So Indiana obviously has won these two football games in the playoffs over Oregon and Alabama by 5 touchdowns each. a lot of Miami fans, and I understand the storylines. I like the narrative that they've come up with, basically putting Indiana in the role of 1983 Nebraska. They're both from the Midwest, even though they're probably 500 miles apart at least, but they're both from the Midwest. They both wear red. They were both considered unbeatable, although I don't know that Indiana is being talked about quite in the light of 1983 Nebraska. They both are undefeated. They both have a Heisman Trophy winner. And then I saw another clip of a Miami fan that was showing plays from the Miami team of 1983 versus this current team, and I didn't really understand the point there. He was trying to show that they were running similar plays, which, yeah, when you run off tackle, it's a similar play, but they were not lining up in the shotgun over and over and over and over back there in 1983. But yeah, there you go. Indiana and Nebraska. Is there a correlation there? Well, certainly all of those points are fact. I will say that. One of these shows, I think it was last night's show, my intent was to scroll through all the Indiana and Miami comments and respond to them because I've seen some utterly ridiculous ones. And man, if David's still here, Dr. Buckeye, let me know if you are still in the chat. I wanted to show you something that I posted tonight on X. So if you're still in the chat, you would appreciate this. Others may not. All right. Again, you can see the odds there on FanDuel. And what I think is a bit ludicrous here is not the point spread necessarily, but the odds. So Miami's plus 275. Indiana is minus 340. What that means is if you place $100 on Miami and they win, you net 275. If you place $100 on Indiana, you only win like $35. What does that minus 340 mean? It means that you need to place $340 down to win 100. So about 3-to-1 ratio. Therefore, if you place that same $100 that you would win with a Miami win at 275, you would only win like $35. That's like an 8-to-1 ratio. And I don't consider that to be like an 8-to-1 Mike Tyson, Buster Douglas type of situation. But regardless, we've got ND 559 showing up. Hello.
How's it going? How's it going, Mark?
It's going pretty well. How are you?
I'm right here enjoying my evening. How can I get this going for you? There's a couple of stuff. I'm not going to tell you this analytical stuff and act like I am ESPN, Homer, and all that jagged stuff. I
Okay.
will tell you this. I'm a diehard Notre Dame fan. Diehard. And I called your show a couple over the summer,
Yeah.
and we talked about how we didn't want college football to get ruined by like the whole NIL and all that. And I guess, unfortunately, it is doing that. And the most saddest thing for me as a fan is seeing the rivalries gone. And I'm kind of upset, kind of bothered. The whole SEC Notre Dame rivalry went to a close, as well as the Michigan one, as well as the Michigan State one. And it's just at a point where like money's bigger than our fandom or our tradition. And that's one of the things as a fan, I think that's what's hurting the sport. But I disagree. I think college football is way better than the NFL by far.
Why?
The kid's competitive. The kids try.
You don't
They have
think they
something to
try in
prove.
the NFL?
Oh, hell no, they don't. No, bro. You can't even touch the quarterback and then they'll throw like a flag there. It's becoming
Okay, well,
flag
that's
football.
different than trying. That has to do with the rules. That has
Yeah,
nothing to do with the effort of the players.
yeah, but I honestly feel like a lot of them, they look at their contracts or
Yeah.
they look at a buyout or sometimes like there's questionable stuff that I see, and that's what kind of like got
Questionable
this
in
to
terms of effort, you mean?
yeah, lack of effort. That's
Okay. I,
mainly.
I would actually argue that it's pretty close. And if anything, I'm starting to see that play in college football. Uh, I think a lot of guys, I could go from Saturday to Saturday and make a reel of guys that aren't real interested in tackling. There's a ton of them out there playing college football.
Yeah, no, I see that too, but I honestly think that in the NFL they're more worried about their contract, their next contract that they're about to get, or the next big next chapter of their life. You know what I mean? But that's just my opinion. You know, I mean,
Well, if
we could
that's what
agree.
you see, that's valid.
Yeah, I just don't like the whole rules either. I feel like they made it so finesse to the point where like you can't even hit a quarterback. You can't. That's like, man, this is football, and I get it, but you know what you signed up for. You know what when you sign a contract to play NFL. Like, what's frustrating is like there's certain calls that happen during the game that are just like, come on, let the guys play. And I get it, it's a violent sport, but at the same time, this is gladiators. This is a gladiator sport.
Sure.
You know what I mean? So I just don't get where we, as a fan, like I'm a diehard Raider. Don't get me wrong. And believe me, I don't want Mendoza. I want the Raiders to trade that pick and get some. They need a lot of help. They need a whole lot of help. They need a
Sure.
whole new team. You know what I mean? So I don't think Mendoza is going to be a one thing fix for us. Like it's not. Let's be real. But my passion is Notre Dame, and I want to ask you a question. How do you feel about us picking up Graham and Porter from you guys?
Well, Mylan Graham's been in the Ohio State system for a few years and hasn't been able to get any playing time, but he's still an excellent talent. I think Quincy Porter is the more interesting prospect just because he's brand new and and I think he's got more of an upside as a just freakish athlete to the extent that he could be as good as anybody out there. But I've obviously not really seen either one of them play because they haven't played in college football.
Well,
So
yeah,
that's
well, they're
why all I
behind.
can give you is just scouting reports and potential.
I mean, just the fact that we're picking up, even if there are your backups or your bench warmers, whatever you want to call it. I mean, you always have receivers that are just lock and loaded at Ohio State. I mean, you can't go against Carnell Tate and Jeremiah Smith. You know, like, come on, man, those guys are studs. They're upperclassmen, so they're gonna get theirs. You know. At the same time, though, it would have been nice to see more of these young guys that we just picked up. I just feel that I think Marcus Freeman is a very unique coach and a very unique individual. I just believe that he's a unicorn, to be honest with you. And I think he has been and will be the best thing that ever happened to Notre Dame. He'll go in the record books on that. And I'm just glad to have Marcus Freeman as our head coach. You know, I could actually tell you guys thank you for that.
Yeah, I think Marcus Freeman's very impressive. He obviously took over that role, having never been a head coach before, and took right to it. I think he may have learned quite a bit from his first two seasons, where they had a few missteps against inferior opponents, and he learned from that. And I think it was unfortunate that we did not see them in the playoff this year because it would have been a heck of a ball game to see them against anybody, any of the top teams in the country. They would have been a tough out for sure.
On that note, when you saw the whole you revealing of the top seeds and all that, what was your as a fan? Cause I could see that you're a fan as well as this is like a business for you.
Of course I
How
am.
did
Yeah.
how did you feel about like seeing a team that should have like? How did you feel? Did you feel? Because I feel two things. I feel like there's nobody to blame but Notre Dame. They did it to themselves. I was very open about like I wish they would split one of those two games from
Sure.
before the season started. Like someone had asked me like, how do I feel about this? I'm like, if we split one of the two, if not win them both, we should be in. There's no doubt about that. If we lose both, because there's always that scenario, then they have a lot of definitive leave no questions to be answered, you know. But I think the damage was done to themselves, you know. So like I'm not here and be like, oh, they should have been it. No, 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 none of that, sir. If anything, like my coach said, we own it and we leave no decision for nobody next year, you know. But seeing them get jaded the way they did, and I feel like that's where the slap in the face was as a fan and as a college football fan. was like you have a team throughout this whole entire revealing of this playoff ahead of all this, and then the last week you saw what they did. That to me was just like there's so much bias in there. Like, how can you at this level have that happen? That's a curiosity. Like, I would like for you to answer, or is it, or what did you feel when you saw all that?
Well, if you're asking me, so let's take your first bit of analysis. How good of a team is Notre Dame, and what was their argument? Well, so on one hand, they lost to Miami fair and square, and therefore I am all about head to head. It should be determined on the field who the better team is, and so Miami got that done. However, you also have to consider it was CJ Carr's first start. They were playing on the road in Miami. They lost on what was basically a walk-off field goal, or a field goal with 30 seconds left in the game. So they played Miami on the scoreboard. Now, the evaluation of the game and the blocking and tackling is another thing. But in regards to on the scoreboard, played Miami about as close as you can play a football game. And then, of course, to lose to Texas A&M basically because you botched an extra point, that's obviously got to be tough to take. So then they had the rest of the season to try to make up for that. Unfortunately, they did not have the schedule outside of USC to make up for that. They could only beat North Carolina State and Navy and fill in the blank, Stanford, and the rest of those teams by so many points. They were about as dominant outside of the Boston College game as they could possibly be against everyone else. Are they one of the 12 best teams in the country? Absolutely. It's not even close. They are safely within the top 12 in the country. But because of the format and because there are two spots for James Madison and Tulane in this situation, then they obviously got knocked out, and the right decision was made to let Miami in over Notre Dame because they played head to head and had the same record. Now, on the flip side, what you're asking about the committee, what the committee pulled off was a complete joke. The committee was negligent in its duties. They unveiled their rankings, I should say, initially with Notre Dame and Miami separated by 8 spots. And then they immediately, it was pretty obvious, determined we screwed up. Now, how in the world that first rankings got unveiled that way without there being a knowledgeable gatekeeper to say, whoa, 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 do you really want to release these rankings? Look at this. These two teams had the same record, and they're 8 spots apart. And they played, and Miami won the football game. So they did nothing. So they made a bunch of moves after that made no sense to inch Miami closer and closer and close. Miami would go out there and beat Stanford, who was one of the worst teams in the country, and they throw them up 4 spots. They were just configuring and manipulating the rankings the rest of the way. And I'm sure that some of them at least, were hoping Miami was just going to lose another game, or Notre Dame was going to lose another game, just to say, okay, we don't have to deal with this anymore. But of course, neither one of them did. So nothing that they did in that scenario made any sense. And Notre Dame was, of course, in front of Miami going into the final rankings. Neither one of them played. How does Miami jump Notre Dame? And then they make this ridiculous statement that, oh, well, we went back and reviewed the game. Well, you were supposed to have watched the game at the time and taken that into account, and nothing's changed about that game. It's been, nobody gained an extra yard since August 31st. That game was already played. It's on tape. It's been there forever. What are you doing? So I thought it was incredibly, they did the right thing. They made the right decision, but the manner in which they got there was completely absurd and negligent. And they owe all sorts of apologies to Notre Dame for screwing them. Not that they should have made it under these circumstances. Notre Dame, again, is safely one of the best teams in the country. They're one of the 6 or 7 best teams in the country. But to string them along that in that way and then pull the carpet from under them was a completely amateur move. It was terrible. They were pathetic. They were negligent. They should all be kicked off the committee.
And the thing is that, yeah, that's complete. I totally agree with head to head should always matter. But the problem was never Miami. The question was, you have an Alabama team that lost and did not move, and you let them in, and you see what happened. And that's not here or there. It is what it is at this point. But to see the rebounding of finishing with what I believe was the number 2 recruiting class, this portal that just pulled that they started off late and then they drastically got these new players in, which is one of the top, I guess. I think the number 1 portal class or something like that. It just shows you the remarkable work and the relentlessness of Notre Dame and restoring Notre Dame, because I think that's what Marcus Freeman has done. Marcus Freeman has done the impossible, or when Brian Kelly was around, he used to always use that phrase, we can't shop down that aisle, and I used to get irritated because I work hard, play hard, you know what I mean? I'm a blue collar guy. I wake up at 3 in the morning, I get off at 5 in the afternoon out here in the West Coast. And I shop down those aisles because I work my ass off. I'm a bougie ass guy and I like to stay bougie. So I'm gonna put in the work. And that's what Marcus Freeman has done with Notre Dame. He has put in so much work. And there's an interview that when he was first being hired, he said, we haven't even scratched our surface. And I feel like even to this point, we still haven't even scratched our surface. And I just feel like I'm at awe with Marcus and how he handles himself. And I'm pretty sure you heard what happened on this whole this past weekend or this past couple of weeks with him and this coach, right? Our wrestling coach.
Yep.
And just the fact that how he goes about everything is just, like I said, I think he's the best thing that ever happened to Notre Dame, and he's going to go down in the book as one of the best coaches at Notre Dame. And for that, I appreciate you taking my call, and I love having these conversations about football. Thank you for giving me your analogy and your time. But I will tell you this. How about them Irish, my boys? You better watch it. 2026, we're on a revenge tour, and we ain't taking no prisoners. How about them Irish, my boys? Let's go. 2026 is going to get time, baby. Let's kick some ass and take no prisoners, because Marcus Freeman is going to go and take everyone and show you. Yeah. Wow. Yeah. How about them Irish, my boys? Have a good one, sir.
Up there.
Yes, sir. I'm excited for next season already.
Here, man.
Good night.
All right. I won't have a voice tomorrow, but that's okay. We appreciate ND 559. Is that what it is? Yeah. Getting us fired up tonight. Just in time to say good night. We appreciate you being here at the Voice of College Football. Our time has run out. And yeah, we do this again on Friday night. How about that? We got a Florida State show that we did tonight. Each and every day, I post the schedule for the Voice of College Football, not just for me, but for the entire network. I post that. And yeah, it's there to partake of all our great shows along the network. We've got a national championship game on Monday. We will be here after the game. We'll be here on Friday, and then probably not Saturday and Sunday, but here after the game on Monday. And then we've got our State of the Voice of College Football address to give everyone. And going to work on a lot of off-season topic, including after the national championship game, we will unveil the top 136 that actually makes sense. Not the top 25 that actually makes sense. The top 136 that actually makes sense. All right. I'm going to have to let my heart rate come back just a bit. Okay. All right. Appreciate you all being here at the Voice of College Football. See you on Friday.